Welcome everyone to this important session on partnerships for regeneration, aligning business and nature. Dear participants, we must recognize that the transition to regenerative agriculture is a social, environmental and commercial necessity, but moving from ambition to action requires a deep look at how we collaborate across the value chain. As you know, the private sector is not a homogeneous block. There are many differences, from the multinational brands, the global distributors, the SMEs, the small farmers. They all have different realities, capacities, and also levels of influence. So today we are here to enable a radical collaboration across the value chains. Together we want to explore how companies can use their influence responsibly to promote fair partnerships, transparency, and credible standards. Today we are building together a learning space, a peer learning exchange, an open dialogue opportunity. So I encourage all of you, and our speakers will join me on stage very soon. I encourage you to share real-life examples, pragmatic examples, case studies, real-life lessons learned that we can exchange together. Because ultimately, scaling regeneration requires us to align incentives, to collaborate across sectors, across stakeholders, to be able to create, to foster true shared value for both people and nature. So let's dive in. To start our conversation, we'll actually address one Slido question, because we want to hear from you in the audience, but also online. Online participants are with us. I think there are many. And so, if you allow me, I'd like to have the possibility to show you the Slido question. The question will be around what is needed for real partnership between business and nature. So please, you can join the Slido question with the QR code here on the screen. And so we'd like if you could specify what is your sector or the context that you're providing the answer from, okay? And the question is, what is needed for real partnership between business and nature? Make sure to write down the sector you are part of so we can have an idea of your perspective. So with that, and while you're providing your answers, I'd love to invite on stage to join me our distinguished panelists, Isabella Pascual-Baker, who is Director of Sustainability and Impact at Datera, Executive Director of the Educar Foundation, and also a coffee producer. Isabella, welcome. Then I'd like to invite Annalie Bustos, Strategic Director for Latin America at the NAIA Trust and Coordinator of the GLFX Espinal Cordoba Semillero. Welcome, Annalie. Then we have the pleasure to welcome Ulrich Kuhlmann, Executive Director, Global Operations at CABI. Welcome, Ulrich. Alida Belandi, President at the Guarani Group, who is also with her in person. Dear Alida, please join us. And finally, we are lucky to have online Alain Nguyen, who is the Global Responsible Sourcing Lead at Nestlé. Alain is also with us online. Welcome, Alain. So before we start, actually, I'd love to see what were your answers on the Slido question. If we have the opportunity to share the screen with the first answers we got, so then we can elaborate a little bit on this and keep in mind also what you think are the key ingredients, elements to foster real partnerships, solid partnerships between business and nature. So in case we can have the Slido answers on screen, would be great. Otherwise, we can also look at it later. What do we have? Courage, a new regenerative design, so innovation. Courage, I love this word, courage, because it takes a lot of courage sometimes to break the silos, and to make the first steps, to talk to each other and find the common ground. Real partnership needs intergenerational collaboration, access to resources and space for young people's ideas to influence action. Exactly. There's a question of power imbalances. Of course, when you start a career, you discover so many things. You don't have the networks, you don't have the capital also to make your ideas and projects reality. So that's where intergenerational collaboration is very much needed. Accountability, community power and willingness. So that's where also we're going to discuss how to build this collaboration within value chains, how to challenge also the injustices, the imbalances that are currently too often observed. Trust, very important. Refocus businesses to collective well-being. Dialogue, open dialogue. That's why we're here today, to build this open dialogue on these important questions. So let's start now. Actually, I'll tell you a bit more of how we're going to address the first round of interventions from our panelists. We'd love to actually build on a metaphor. The metaphor is the one of the rose, the thorns, and the buds. I don't know if we can get on screen actually this garden map, because we're going to be building a garden map all together, and our panelists will share key messages from real-life examples, from their work, case studies, and examples. They will share with us, what are the successes? What are the good practices? So the rose, the nice flower. But also what are the challenges, the imbalances, the injustices, all the things to correct within value chains and ways to collaborate better. So these are the thorns, the things that sticks, that can be a bit annoying when you touch these beautiful flowers. And then we have the buds. So the buds are the emerging flowers. These are the opportunities, the things you can do better in the future, the things you can improve, but also the possibilities and ways to foster collaboration across value chains in the future. So each one of our panelists will actually elaborate on this metaphor of the rose, the thorns, and the buds. And I ask each one of you to remain between those 4 or 5 minutes, as you know, and to tell us about real examples from your work. So I'm going to start actually by Alain. So you can see the metaphor here on the screen. We're going to build this live garden map. And as we speak, our colleague Sarah Mancinelli online will be also writing, some notes. So then we're going to see some patterns that emerge, patterns around the challenges, the opportunities, but also the success stories that we want to hear from you. And to start, I will ask Alain. Alain Nguyen, please, the floor is yours to start elaborating on your story.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I hope you can hear me well. I will directly start with the rose. Some of you might know that at Nestlé, we work on a program that's called the Responsible Sourcing Program for Vegetables and Spices. It's basically based on 3 pillars. First is transparency in our supply chain. We want to know where our ingredients are coming from. And then we want to know how they're made. We are checking the ethical compliance of what's happening at the ground level in farms that supply our raw ingredients. When we find potential for regenerative agriculture implementation or maybe some human rights issues that require our assistance, we go into capacity building with the farmers and the suppliers as well. We think that we need that for changing how things are done in the origins, because sometimes the situation is difficult for the farmers and the workers. So far, we've been working in more than 10 countries across 30 of our suppliers, strategic suppliers, and we work with 50 different types of crops. So I would say it's at reasonable scale. Now, what makes this partnership very important in my eyes and why I think it works as of today is that we've been able to leverage partners, NGOs, to bridge the gap between our corporate strategies and the farmers and the workers through suppliers. And by their human connection with the farmers, these local partners have basically enabled everybody in the programs to contribute and to co-create these partnerships. And that's why I think so far it's been successful. Now, I just don't want to make sure I'm clear on what I consider success, because everybody has their own views. In my opinion, we are all aiming for impacts on the ground, and I would say soil is one of the very important ones. But we all know that it takes a long time for soils to actually improve when you implement regenerative agriculture, and therefore I also like to consider the farmer knowledge and attitude, adoption of interventions to be a proxy that is useful in understanding if we are successful. And I would say where you can really measure success is when you get to a position where farmers are going to continue implementing regenerative agriculture in facing with reduced or inexistent subsidies. Now, when it comes to the thorns, the challenges we face, I would say first we face ourselves as a corporation. We are under a lot of pressure from investors to maintain healthy margins, which is putting pressure on the cash we can invest into such programs at the ground. And I would say one of the ways we've managed to overcome this issue is by focusing on specific supply chains and suppliers that are more strategic. But of course, we need to be careful, because once we embark on a journey with one of these suppliers, we have to commit for the long run. Otherwise, we might not manage to make it. The thorns that, in my opinion, are very important from an external perspective are limited market demand. We're still early and we are creating rejag, so it's not as organic, not well spread. And for this to change, we would need clear definitions and standardized metrics to be widespread. And that I don't think is the case today. Of course, there's also the fact that organizing such program is complex and has a lot of moving parts. So what I think can support the transition is, first of all, to have appropriate monitoring, reporting, and verification schemes, MRVs, because these need to be able to demonstrate progress to all parties, the farmers, the supplier, ourselves as corporate investors, because everybody, is eager to see results. And once this is in place, we can start going into more pre-competitive collaborations. And of course, we need more support from governments in terms of regulatory framework that are supportive of REGAG implementation and access to funding for farmers. Thank you very much for bearing with me.
Thank you, Alain. Thank you very much for being very transparent and leading us through your successes, but also the challenges. Now I'd like to give the floor to Isabella, please, to elaborate also on your story.
Hello, thank you very much. I prepared a little bit of desculpa, eu ia falar português. Boa tarde, bom dia para todo mundo. Meu combinado era falar português. Eu separei, então, como foi pedido de uma maneira destaque, e eu queria começar dizendo que um importante fato na da Terra Café, a gente produz cafés especiais sustentáveis, é a liderança. É top-down. A liderança pede, exige, e nós nascemos sustentáveis. Então, produzir café em parceria com o planeta sempre foi estrutural na nossa empresa. E isso evoluiu a ponto de, esse ano, nós separarmos, de certa forma, a da Terra Café da Terra Sustentabilidade. Hoje, a da Terra Sustentabilidade é uma unidade de negócio que compreende 3 eixos que nós acreditamos ser fundamentais. O ESG, as certificações e conformidades, o Trillion Project, que é um programa de restauro do cerrado, em parceria com a produção agrícola de café, e a da Terra Ciência, porque sem pesquisa, sem ciência, nós não evoluímos. A da Terra Sustentabilidade, ter uma unidade de negócio focada nisso, representa o quanto nós acreditamos, e acreditamos principalmente que não vai haver produção se a gente não tiver o ESG, a ciência e um restauro do bioma que a gente está, que é o cerrado. Como que a gente implementa isso na fazenda? Uma das estratégias que a gente escolheu, por exemplo, é ter o nosso viveiro próprio. Nós, desde sempre, produzimos as nossas mudas para que elas sejam tão impecáveis ao chegar no campo que a gente, lá na frente, vai evitar que a gente use muito agroquímico e que a gente precise fazer tanta intervenção. Então, a gente prefere investir Eu brinco com a analogia na primeira infância da planta, para levar uma planta mais saudável para o solo. E isso mostra a nossa visão sistêmica. A nossa visão sistêmica de integrar, mais do que fazer uma lista de itens do que é preciso ser feito, é a integração e a visão sistêmica do que precisa ser feito. Não significa que a gente não tem desafio. O nosso maior desafio, claro, é a mudança climática e como a gente se organiza dia após dia, pensando no curto, no médio e no longo prazo, para enfrentar tudo isso. A gente tem um desafio muito grande com a mão de obra, né, de convencer as pessoas de voltarem a trabalhar no campo, de ressignificar o trabalho no campo. E, principalmente, também um desafio com as indústrias de bioinsumo e de agroquímicos. A gente precisa conversar mais com essas empresas para entender o que os agricultores precisam e encontrar soluções mais reais e mais verdadeiras para o que a natureza pede. Mas falando de coisa boa e das oportunidades, a primeira oportunidade que a gente vê como cafés especiais é o mercado. O mercado de cafés especiais, ele pede sustentabilidade, ele pede uma agricultura regenerativa. Então, isso nos traz um reconhecimento muito grande e nos reforça de que o que a gente está fazendo vale a pena. É transformar todas essas práticas que eu poderia aqui discorrer, agricultura de precisão, uso correto da água, compostagem orgânica, numa estratégia da empresa, sair do checklist de uma certificação, e isso, de fato, se tornar uma estratégia. Isso para a da terra, mas também para os outros. E, por último, o conhecimento. O conhecimento de duas formas. O conhecimento reconhecendo todos os institutos de pesquisa, as faculdades, os institutos, a ciência que vem sendo estudada até agora, mas que isso não nos impeça de enxergar o potencial que a inteligência artificial tem, o que as startups estão trazendo, o que a nossa juventude das faculdades estão trazendo como inovação. Então, essa combinação do nosso histórico do agro com esse futuro. A gente acredita que essas são as oportunidades que quem está no agro hoje não deve perder. Obrigada.
Obrigado. Obrigado, Isabella. Now I'd love to give the floor to Anali also to share your story, please.
Primeiramente, bom dia para todos. Eu vou começar falando pela minha roça, o que me enriquece trabalhando nessa área da agricultura regenerativa, que no meu caso eu tenho o privilégio de ter duas áreas de trabalho. Uma é a academia. Eu tenho feito minha graduação em ecologia, mas depois toda a minha pós-graduação em agricultura regenerativa. E ao mesmo tempo eu tive a oportunidade de trabalhar na Argentina, no meu país, com uma empresa que trabalha em agricultura regenerativa industrial, de grande escala, né? Então, tem sido muito rico para mim ter esses dois olhares e integrar muito as duas coisas e também trabalhar com produtores e entender o quanto complexo é esse problema, esse desafio, mais que problema, né? Não é um problema que tem que ser solucionado, mas acho que a natureza e a intersecção com a agricultura é uma coisa que tem que ser compreendida. Então, no meu caso, acho que isso é a minha roça, é ter a possibilidade de ter muitos lentes diferentes, muitos olhares, para entender que as soluções também são sistêmicas e também são complexas, né? Passando para o espinho, o que eu vejo como um desafio, além de os desafios que os companheiros já apresentaram, eu acho que o primeiro é entender se a gente está desenvolvendo uma lógica mental que possa acompanhar a transição regenerativa. Pensando que a transição regenerativa é uma das 3 grandes transições que precisamos nos próximos, nem décadas, nos próximos anos, em conjunto com a transição do transporte, da mobilidade e a transição energética, eu me pergunto às vezes se, tendo vindo de décadas, muitas décadas de trabalhar nessa lógica de que os resultados na agricultura são rápidos, de que o sistema tem problemas que são solucionados com um paquete tecnológico que trabalha de uma forma que eu falo farmacêutica. Eu faço uma analogia com o sistema de saúde. Quando a gente tem uma doença, vamos para o médico e às vezes ele só dá remédios, né? Sem pensar nas causas dessa doença. Então, eu enxergo a agricultura do mesmo jeito. E a forma que a gente trabalhou até agora foi assim, foi farmaceuticamente. Então, a minha pergunta, o desafio é pensar se estamos desenvolvendo uma lógica mental que acompanhe a regeneração das relações que estão presentes no sistema natural. Porque também tem uma coisa que eu acho assim muito doida, de não enxergar a agricultura como natureza. Mesmo quando a gente fala a agricultura e a natureza. E, tipo, é uma coisa que não faz sentido. Eu não posso falar minha cabeça, meu corpo. Não, é tudo a mesma coisa. Isso está muito presente em muitos aspectos. Até nas currículas de agronomia, por exemplo, no meu país, eu descobri faz pouco tempo que as pessoas que estudam agronomia ou agricultura, eles não têm ecologia. Olha o quanto que tem desconexão ali. Então, acho que o desafio principal também é começar a desenvolver uma lógica de relações, de entender que essa transição tem a ver com relações de espécies entre elas, de relações de espécies com o sistema, e que os resultados vão vir, mas talvez não exatamente nos tempos nos quais estamos acostumados. E só para falar do que eu enxergo como uma possibilidade é realmente integrar mais essas diferentes áreas, entender os desafios não como problemas, mas como coisas que têm solução sistêmica e que vão vir de diferentes dimensões e que literalmente pensar na agricultura regenerativa é a chave para a agricultura continuar no tempo. Porque a natureza é literalmente a base do 100% da agricultura e da economia. Então, não pensar nisso ou pensar que só uma parte da economia depende da natureza, eu acho que é uma coisa meio delusional, que temos que começar a pensar sobre e pensar soluções desde todas as áreas. Obrigada.
Muito obrigado, Anali. Now I'm very pleased to give the floor to Ulrich for some remarks. Please, Ulrich.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here and to join this panel and contribute to the topic. Maybe before I start, I say that CABI is an international intergovernmental not-for-profit organization which is owned by 48 member countries. And all these countries are equal in the say and the governance structure of what we do. They influence our policy and our direction of what we do. I think that's important that you know this, because we have a lot of lower middle income countries also in our portfolio, and that influence my perspective of the world, okay? So I'm not only having a Brazil viewpoint, so please forgive me that I have a kind of a more global approach to this. We are working out of 12 operations globally, and in this sense we are working with a number of value chain stakeholders. And of course, private sector is very important in this game, yes, as you know too well. Pesticide risk reduction is very high on the agenda of CABI. And this is, of course, also a cornerstone for regenerative agriculture. And moving away from an over-reliance on synthetic pesticides towards more integrated pest management and ecological approaches not only reduces risk, but also helps restore soil biology, strengthen biodiversity, and build the resilience that regenerative systems depend on, right? And I think the entire discussion is so timely because in the last FAO statistics report from 25, they report that we have used globally 71% more pesticides in a time period from 2000 to 2023. And I think this is really worthwhile to note, and that action is required, right? However, achieving this transition, particularly towards lower risk plant protection products, requires more than just the availability of solutions. It depends critically on trusted, independent advisory support for growers, as well as access to products and approaches that are not only effective, but also affordable. And affordability is another key barrier or a thorn what we have to deal with. Even when lower risk solutions exist, their uptake can be limited if costs are perceived as high relative to conventional options. Or if the economic benefits are uncertain, growers must be confident that these alternatives will deliver reliable results under their specific conditions they're working under. This highlights the importance of generating robust, locally validated use cases that demonstrates both the efficacy and economic viability of lower risk approaches. So evidence-based is really important also in our discussion here, right? But let me come back for 1 second again to the independent advisory service. If we look at this globally, public extension services are rather limited and not really available to the growers, right? And women farmers are disproportionately underserved. Many extension systems, the public extension system, face chronic understaffing, limited funding, and weak institutional capacity, which restricts, of course, their reach and their ability to respond to emerging challenges. And at the same time, there is a significant knowledge gap. Many growers and many advisory service providers remain unaware of low-risk plant protection options, or they lack the practical step-by-step guidance needed to use them effectively. Digital advisory tools offer, therefore, an important opportunity to close these gaps. By improving access to reliable, locally relevant knowledge, they can enable faster, better informed decision-making at scale. So, for example, global initiatives like what we have launched, for example, the Cabby Bioprotection Portal, provides an opportunity to fill this gap, because we are helping to equip farmers and advisors worldwide with independent evidence-based information on registered bioprotection solutions. So, in short, if we want regenerative agriculture to scale, we must invest not only in innovation, but also in particular in independent advisory ecosystems, local grounded evidence, knowledge platforms that make these innovations affordable, credible, and actionable for all growers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ulrich. Now we have Alida with us. We'll also be sharing some perspectives. Please, Alida, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludwig. Thank you, Kabi. Thank you all the institutions that have organized this event to allow us to have our perspective as well here. I'm not only representing our own group, but I also represent here the Entrepreneurial Council of Latin America, consisted of business people devoted to social responsibility and commitment to the environment. And the Brazilian Association of Machinery and Equipment Manufacturers. We have many chambers, and the most important one is the one that produces machinery and equipment for agriculture and horticulture. Well, having said that, it's important for us to say that behind our eco-entrepreneurial group is sustainability as the main and key issue that inspire all our activities. We have 4 areas that are more important for our organization: horticulture, agriculture, environmental health, and forest fires. How to prevent, control, and fight forest fires. The understanding within this reality is that everything is interrelated. And I can give you a simple example in this sense. Forest fires are one of the most important emitters of CO2 that causes global warming, that impacts on the productivity of agriculture, also in natural disasters, causing other natural disasters. And at the end of this equation, we have food safety. So I think this explains very well the interrelationship between these things. Our company has completed 103 years, and we have a long tradition of working with universities and institutes, as we strongly believe that it's very important to back up our engineering with scientific view. So we work very close to institutions like IAC in Brazil, IAC, like IPARC in England, from Imperial College, and others. So like Isabella, we also work very closely with the scientific community, because we think that it's very important to have science applied to the industry. The other point, I think, is related to challenges. Climate change maybe is one of the most important challenges we are facing nowadays. For you to have an idea, we have 240,000 environmental refugees in the world. And apart from that, you have an impact on the economy, you have an impact on public health, and you have an impact in natural disasters. So we are not maybe paying the right attention to this issue. The second challenge is the lack of men and women power in the fields, in the farms. And this is not happening only in Brazil, but in Latin America, in Africa, everywhere. The third one is the speed that technology advanced and how we can implement it accordingly in our companies. Trying to comply with the needs of the small and medium-sized farmers especially. Because if 20% of the farmers in the world, they supply grains, 80% of the farmers in the world, they belong to what we call the food chain. And so the food chain is fundamental. And therefore, we have to pay attention to the small and medium-sized farmers, and we have been concentrating our efforts to develop technology for small and medium-sized farmers. As far as the challenges, how to involve people, commit people in sustainability. So we have started many years ago when it was not fashionable yet. We have started involving our own people in projects to educate and make awareness and give examples for the people working for us. Then we moved to the community in Itu, where we are located, then to the state, and we started a project with the government of the state of São Paulo to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere. And at the end of this process, our company became a decarbonized company. And then we moved to many countries around the world. We operate in 85 countries in 5 continents, and with a special attention to Latin America. So this can give you an idea of the challenges that and how we have dealt with them. As far as opportunities are concerned, we believe that Latin America, geographically speaking, is a great opportunity in this very complex, disruptive geopolitics and geoeconomics that we have in the world. Why is that? Because we have the cleanest energy matrix, we have the agro-food matrix, the most important one in the world, so we can supply food if FAO considers that there will be a necessity of increasing 60% of food production for 2030 for 9 billion people in the world. Latin America can provide 60% of this 60%. So we have a great opportunity in our region in this sense. The second opportunity we see is how to, in the sense of providing clean water, how to operate with new technologies that are fundamental now to preserve water. And regarding this sense, we are working as a company to provide to different crops what we call technological packages. Coffee is the most important one, Isabella. So we participate on the specialty coffees conferences, and we have a close relation with café in Costa Rica, coffee in other countries. And so the focus is basically the safety of the environment and the safety of the operators, increasing efficiency to reduce the consumption of water and also to reduce the consumption of inputs. And finally, to say that bioinputs is an incredible opportunity also to sort many of the problems that we are facing right now. And we have another company in our group that is called Guarabios, where we have put together in a portfolio a number of products, especially for soil regeneration. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, I think stress hídrico is a key question. Bio-inputs, biofertilizers, biostimulants, and others to recover the soil, and also understanding the good practices to be applied in the field with the farmers. Training and certification of products.
Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. So let's have a look at what we have now on this live garden map, actually. It's starting to be really full. I was thinking what patterns emerged there, you know, and I tried to put my finance lens, actually, and to look at this from the point of view of risks and returns, you know. When investors look at things, they look at risks, they also look at returns. And there you see a number of risks that are actually all across the value chains and different depending on the categories of stakeholders. But you have also lots of returns, possibly among the successes, but also on the potential successes, you know, the buds. So that's, I think, something to get in our mind, you know, how can we try to have more connections so that the risks are reduced and the opportunities, the returns are increased, you know, and around what is noted there, you know, system thinking, having locally developed systems, robust locally developed systems, you know, and one of the challenges today is to bring capital and financing to where it's most needed. So ideas are there on the ground, very good projects are there, but how do you actually channel more resources, more support to the ground? That's where also technology and innovation is very much needed, you know, and actually this afternoon we have a session on a new AI-led marketplace that could possibly also be part of the solutions around holistic and the systemic vision that is needed for the future. So very, very interesting what we have already. We could go into a lot of the details because, of course, as part of the risks, there are risks that are now almost intangible, like the climate risks, you know, and the biodiversity erosion, the land degradation. We have to face this because then it leads to major social injustices, especially for local communities and indigenous people. So we have to also listen to what we heard in the opening this morning. That was a very strong voice, actually, reminding us we need to look at those value chains, starting with those that are actually producing on the ground, those who are the stewards of nature. So now I'd like actually to turn back to our panelists, because you heard the stories, the different stories that you shared between yourselves. I'd love to give you the floor back to maybe reflect on what you've heard, and maybe you have some things to share, messages to share between each other that could maybe reinforce some of the challenges you face, that may also be opportunities, you know, to reduce the risks and increase the returns also in the future for all the stakeholders all across the value chain, starting with those on the ground. So maybe Annalie, you'd like to start? And just a remark, if you have questions, we'd really love to take your questions from the floor. Also for the audience online, you can just go on Slido and input your questions there, okay? And if we have time, we'll also use them at the end of the session. Anali, please.
5 minutes too?
2-3 minutes.
Ok. Então, só reflexões que vieram de escutar aqui os meus companheiros e também na minha experiência. Como eu falei anteriormente, eu tive a oportunidade de trabalhar com uma empresa na Argentina, se chama Nativas, que trabalha com agricultura extensiva, né? Então, estamos falando de 1000 hectares, é uma fazenda pequena, daí para cima. E quando começamos a pensar qual que é o ecossistema dessa agricultura regenerativa e dessa transição, teve um ponto que foi uma virada de chave, que foi passar de entender o produtor como cliente a entender que o produtor é o fornecedor, não só daquelas empresas para as quais vende a sua produção, mas também para nós, que éramos tipo desenvolvedores de projetos. E eu acho que é muito importante se manter na mente que o produtor é o fornecedor da cadeia inteira, de todos, não importa qual seja o setor do setor privado, nada acontece se o produtor não tem as condições para essa produção acontecer. Então isso para mim me deu muita clareza para continuar pensando nesse ecossistema, quais são as relações entre os diferentes atores na agricultura regenerativa. Também uma outra coisa que vem da minha experiência, que eu estou atualmente trabalhando no espaço de uma organização ecocêntrica que trabalha em filantropia, em projetos nature-based, principalmente na América Latina. Então, aí, quando eu penso numa transição, tem muito risco associado, principalmente com o aspecto econômico. Então, no caso que a filantropia esteja presente, um ator filantrópico pode fazer esse trabalho de absorver os riscos, colocar o capital catalítico necessário para essa transição começar. Mas, em muitos casos, esse ator filantrópico não está presente. Então, aí minha pergunta é, quem que é esse ator que tem que colocar as condições para a transição acontecer? E eu acho que são as políticas públicas, né? Que lamentavelmente, pelo menos desde meu país, desde a Argentina, temos um retrocesso nas políticas públicas relacionadas com restauração, com regeneração, mas é muito importante que exista esse ator das políticas para colocar as condições necessárias, o cenário necessário para uma transição começar, dando os benefícios que tem que ter o produtor, dando o piso mínimo de capital, talvez, de créditos e de condições para isso acontecer. E só para finalizar também, outra coisa que eu vi na minha experiência trabalhando na agricultura regenerativa são os booms de tendência. Quando passou o boom do carbono, começou o boom da crédito de biodiversidade. Eu trabalho muito em biodiversidade. Aí, quando comecei a trabalhar em agricultura regenerativa, o primeiro que chegou nas minhas conversas foi: vamos trabalhar com medição de biodiversidade e créditos de biodiversidade. E aí a gente começou a pensar um monte de coisas, não entendendo que o primeiro que tem que estar são as condições para essa biodiversidade estar presente. Então, tipo, tínhamos produtores, eles ouviam coisas sobre biodiversidade, sobre a possibilidade de cobrar alguma coisa por isso, e era você pensar que o sistema tem que se voltar para dar condições para a biodiversidade estar presente. Não é uma coisa que acontece de um dia para o outro. Então, eu acho também que entender quais que são os passos desse processo para todos os atores dessa cadeia é um passo-chave também para essa transição acontecer e para ter os resultados no futuro que esperamos nessa atividade. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Isabella, I see you have the microphone, so I'd like to give you the floor next.
Obrigada. Obrigada pela contribuição de vocês. 2 pontos que me chamaram a atenção e que me faz refletir também. Comentei com você, enxergar a agricultura como natureza. Acho que esse ponto de partida muda todo o futuro que a gente desenha. E a gente está vendo pés de café, no meu caso, mas outras culturas, e a gente desconecta, como se muitas vezes a agricultura, e de fato muitas vezes ela é um pouco vilã do problema ambiental, mas se a gente muda essa lógica, e não é fácil mudar mesmo, eu acredito que a gente começa a fazer escolhas melhores e de uma forma sistêmica. Um ponto importante aqui foi realmente o pensamento sistêmico. Acho que todos nós aqui aprendemos que é impossível resolver a complexidade que a gente vive hoje de uma maneira linear, processual, mudando apenas um item. E eu aproveito e pulo para o que você falou sobre a questão das tendências e da superficialidade hoje, que muitas vezes empresas sustentáveis e corretas, que pensam muito no longo prazo, têm dificuldade de passar essa narrativa, porque nós competimos com respostas rápidas, imediatas e de tendências, e que nem sempre, muitas vezes, não trazem o resultado de fato sustentável, que causam uma transformação com impacto positivo para o futuro. Então, a dificuldade realmente de engajar outros para produzir sustentabilidade, para ser sustentável, é muito difícil, porque a gente tem uma competição dos quick wins. E, nesse sentido, eu termino a minha fala dizendo que é muito importante para a gente conseguir engajar que quem faz consiga trazer modelos customizáveis para os diferentes tipos e tamanhos de empresas, de agricultores e de produtores. Procurar sempre uma receita pronta, uma bala de prata, só nos distancia da gente atingir o resultado. Então, eventos como esse e trocas como essas são fundamentais para a gente encontrar modelos reais e aplicáveis. E eu digo isso porque eu fiz uma experiência para essa intervenção aqui, para essa fala, com a minha empresa. Eu convidei 10 pessoas de áreas diferentes da empresa para que cada um escrevesse separadamente o que colocaria como destaque, como bulbo e como desafio. E foi um exercício muito interessante, não só para entender como todo mundo pensa o que é oportunidade, desafio, mas principalmente porque prova que a gente não constrói nada sozinho. Se a gente pensa numa biodiversidade do solo, trazendo espécies variadas, a gente também tem que pensar que para construir uma agricultura regenerativa, a gente tem que ter uma biodiversidade de time, e não pensar numa única pessoa. A gente tem que pensar nessa pessoa como um time. E foi uma experiência muito interessante, e eu aproveito até para agradecer todo mundo que ajudou a construir o que eu estou complementando e contando aqui hoje.
Thank you very much, Alida. Yes. Sorry. Yes, please, you can go next. Thanks, Isabella. That's for you, Alida. Yeah, ladies first. Huh? I think that's good practice. Sorry, Uli. And Alain, thanks for waiting. Alida, please.
I will speak in Portuguese now.
That's
I
great.
think most of the audience is Portuguese speaking.
Yeah, we love Portuguese. So
Vou falar em português agora, na nossa. Primeira coisa que eu acho fundamental aqui é a gente entender os problemas e trabalhar nos problemas de forma universal. Os grandes problemas hoje são universais. Então, a gente precisa trabalhar junto, setor público-privado, por isso a importância das parcerias público-privadas. Também de ter a academia, a universidade, junto com as empresas e junto com as organizações e as instituições, como é o caso do CAB. E até aproveito para dizer que a nossa parceria com eles já vem de alguns anos, já realizamos vários projetos juntos na Argentina, no Peru, na Bolívia, e isso optimizando algo que é fundamental, como também orientação, que é a tecnologia de aplicação. Então, isso em primeiro lugar, a gente precisa trabalhar junto, como a Isabela colocou, também a Anali, né? Esse primeiro ponto que eu acho fundamental. O segundo ponto é entender realmente o significado de sustentabilidade. E dentro de sustentabilidade a gente tem a bioeconomia circular, a gente tem a agricultura biodinâmica, a gente tem a agricultura regenerativa, agricultura orgânica, e ainda estamos um pouco confusos, eu acho, de como nomear, né, e trabalhar esses conceitos de acordo. O terceiro ponto que o Rick colocou um pouco aqui é a redução de riscos. E dentro dos riscos, talvez os dois mais importantes que nós enfrentamos hoje, primeiro é o estresse hídrico. Nós temos muito pouca água doce no planeta. A agricultura é um grande consumidor de água. Então, a gente tem que desenvolver tecnologia adequada para reduzir o consumo da água e também, naturalmente, dos produtos, sejam eles químicos ou não químicos. Mas dá uma atenção especial, eu acho, para os bioinsumos. Hoje é uma indústria que cresce 30% ao ano no mundo inteiro. E a Argentina tem um papel importante nesse setor, como o Brasil também. Então, acho que esse é o segundo ponto. E um terceiro que eu queria dizer aqui é que oportunidades como essa, esses encontros, eles criam um novo sistema de inteligência. É um sistema de inteligência mais abrangente, mais imersivo, e que nos ajuda a desenvolver melhor as soluções. Então, é agradecer esse encontro.
Obrigado.
If you don't mind, I keep going in English. I think I liked the point about public-private partnerships. I think is rather important in this entire context if we want to make the transition make work, right? These multiple stakeholder processes are definitely required to make sure that we get a kind of a common sense, and this is absolutely required with interventions in the area of policy, but also in the area of research and, of course, in the area of production, right? And I'm saying that particularly the private sector, of course, is really needed also, for example, in policy-driven decisions which are being made. Consultations have to be made. Again, a little bit more about my specific field where I work, of course, with governmental sector stakeholders, but also with the private industry to come together and to identify which kind of steps could be taken to reduce pesticide use, right? And this cannot be done ad hoc. In a way, there must be a kind of a common sense of what is actually feasible and affordable actually for the farmers on the ground. And the same is true also in the area of research, where research is required, which are actually the needs, where we need to go over to make sure that the farmers are able to have the tools in their hands which are required to have the success. And production, I think in the end we need to remind all of us, the growers are also human beings and they think about income. I think we all think about income when we are working. That's how we are. And we are not winning them immediately when we talk about biodiversity and other things, right? We need to reflect that. In the end, we can only convince them when we have really, as I said earlier, robust cases in place, cases where we can convince them. I think these wonderful demonstrations plots, which a lot of you are doing, are really helpful. Learning from farmers to farmers is still a very important part of our journey. So, and if we take that on board, I think then how the knowledge is being transferred from one to the other, I think then we will be also successful with regenerative agriculture on scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. Now I'd like to give the floor to Alain, who has been patiently waiting.
Yes.
And thanks, Alain, for being online with us today. And also, just before giving you the floor, Alain, I'd love if we could share the questions that you have here from the floor, but also that we have online. So at least we can keep them as a food for thought. We may not have to go through all of them, but at least we'll keep them in mind also for the future. So please, Alain, the floor is yours.
Absolutely, no, we can. Thank you very much. I'm very inspired by what I heard, and there's a few statements that resonated particularly in my mind. The first one is,
Oh, it seems we can't hear you, Alain. I don't know if it comes from your
can you hear
microphone.
me? No? You can.
No, it works well. Yeah,
Okay.
we have you. Yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm very inspired by some of the things I heard today. There's a few things that resonate more than others, though. The first one is that the size of the problem is gigantic, as my fellow panelists were saying, but it seems that RegionAg is the one tool that is going to contribute to reducing all of them. So I think this is a very big rose, in my opinion, and a potential. Somebody was mentioning the fact that we need to give more power to farmers, and I think indeed we do. And one of the ways we can do that is by rushing now towards a status where common definitions and measurements are available for everybody. Because as a farmer, if I use something that is unique and universal, if the buyer is not interested anymore in what I did, I can sell it to another buyer, and that's very important in my view. Now, coming to the topic of how to implement regenerative agriculture, I know a lot of people have high hopes in AI and other such tools and technologies, but I think the truth is that nature and RegAg are millions of different moving pieces all at once. And so that is why, at least in our program, we've decided to put the farmer at the center and to build their knowledge, because once they are trusted and they are given a lot of more knowledge, they feel free maybe to test some of their understandings and to fail. And this iteration of testing, failing, learning is going to be what delivers something that is going to be sustainable. So one of the ways I think is important to keep in mind to build that knowledge in farmers is we need this local contact with the farmers. So these local experts sharing the same culture and understanding of the farmers as the farmers are very important for me to make sure that they build their knowledge and they feel able to dare and test things. And I think that if we manage to do this, then also the trust factor is going to be there, in the sense that if somebody was talking about, I think the gentleman from Kabi was talking about, switching from products to other products. And imagine if you are a farmer and you're told to switch from one product to another, if it's coming just from a machine, you might be tempted to not do it because you're afraid you might lose your crop if it fails. So I think this factor of trust between the local partners and the farmers, on top of the knowledge that farmers will get, is extremely important. I hope this resonates with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alain. Thanks to all our dear panelists. I think we still have the opportunity to see some of the questions that you've asked. If ever possible, would be great to see them, so we can all keep them in mind for the future. But waiting for that, I'd really like to thank all of you for being so, positive in sharing, in creating this open dialogue. I think we all have to learn from what you shared in terms of what innovations are needed, what are the realities on the ground that we should never forget, but also what it takes, to connect local initiatives to capital. So there we have those questions. There are many, actually. So we won't have the time to elaborate on all of them, but I could pick some of the keywords around communications, around transparency, around creating the conditions for trusted relationships all across the value chains. Very interesting one that we have now, one for Alain. Could you share the most valuable returns for Nestlé as a company and for the farmers who supply to Nestlé of the regenerative agriculture program? How can small and medium-sized businesses contribute to regenerative transitions, not only large corporations? Very important questions. All sizes of companies can contribute. At the end of the day, it's a solidarity chain, it's a value chain that should be integrated from the bottom upwards. What kinds of standards or accountability mechanisms are needed to make regenerative claims credible? So, unfortunately, we won't have the time to get your perspectives, but I really encourage all of you to reflect on some of these questions. Maybe, Alain, you want still, I can give you like 30 seconds to give an answer to this very specific question, and then we'll have to close. So, Alain, if you want to elaborate very briefly.
farming took place on that plot in the past. And so one of the values that I withdrew from this program on regenerative agriculture is that many times we heard from farmers and suppliers that all of the interventions they implemented using our program have been helping them to keep stable yields despite these climate shocks. So I'll just stop there. This is for me the one benefit that I see because it comes from farmers and it's directly linked to what we buy.
Thank you very much. Isabella, I think you want to say something? So I will have the same rule. You all have 30 seconds, and that way we stay within the time that I've been allocated. So please,
I'll be shorter.
final remarks.
Desculpa, eu vou responder a primeira. Para mim, o maior desequilíbrio hoje é a oferta de créditos para os pequenos e para os médios produtores. Então, soluções mais viáveis, soluções financeiras que atendam verdadeiramente o pequeno e o médio produtor. Acho que esse é o maior desequilíbrio que tem hoje nesse poder de produção e compra.
Obrigado. Alida, you also have 30 seconds if you want.
Políticas públicas, Isabela falou já da parte do crédito, também o seguro para os agricultores, que é igualmente importante, uma vez que eles são a principal razão da nossa existência, de todos que estão aqui. E eu queria deixar uma mensagem que a gente fala muito de inteligência artificial, nós já tivemos o momento da inteligência emocional. Eu acho que a gente está numa era de pensar na inteligência espiritual, para que possa dar, né, suporte para tudo isso.
Thank you very much. Also to bring the spirituality aspect into the discussion to never forget. Uli, do you have some final words?
Maybe towards the last one. I would foresee, at least is my wishful thinking, that the regenerative agriculture is actually the way of how we are doing farming, right? So that I wonder if you really want to go into this direction like what we have done with organic farming, that certification is required and so on. It would add another layer and it would add a lot of costs again, which most probably some of the farmers cannot take on. And so my really vision is that this is the common standard of how we produce going forward.
Thank you, Uli. Anali, I give you the final words? No? Okay. Then thank you very much. And thank you for all of you online and here with us. And now it's time to give back the floor to Pei, our great MC.